What's the one moment when you realized you were the villain in someone else's story? I always thought I was the good son. When my grandma died last year, I stepped up while everyone else was falling apart. Dad was crying in his car for hours. My Uncle Kevin barely showed up to the hospital. But me? I handled everything. The funeral arrangements, the paperwork, calling relatives. Everyone kept saying how mature I was, how responsible. I felt proud of myself. Grandma had been living with us for 3 years after her stroke. Dad worked double shifts at the warehouse and still came home to cook her dinner every night. He'd sit with her for hours watching those old game shows she loved, even though I could see how exhausted he was. Meanwhile, Uncle Kevin lived 2 states away and visited maybe twice a year. When he did come, he'd argue with Dad about money or complain about how the house smelled like medicine. The lawyer called me directly about settling the estate since I was handling everything. He said the will reading was scheduled for next week, but if I wanted to come by early to pick up some documents, that was fine. I figured it would save time, so I went. That's when I saw it, the real will, and my heart just stopped. Everything was going to Kevin. The house worth $300,000, the savings account with $150,000, even Grandma's car. Dad got nothing except some jewelry and photo albums. I sat there reading it over and over, thinking it had to be a mistake. This was the same Kevin who forgot her birthday 3 years straight, the same Kevin who was currently in rehab for the 2nd time. Meanwhile, Dad had literally given up his social life to take care of her. I drove home that night feeling sick. Dad was in the kitchen making his sad bachelor dinner, and he looked so tired. His hair had gone completely gray in the past year. He kept talking about how worried he was about money, how he didn't know how he'd afford the house payments without Grandma's Social Security helping out. The whole situation felt so wrong, so I fixed it. I found a will template online and spent hours making it look authentic. I practiced Grandma's signature until it was perfect. I even spilled coffee on it and crumpled it up a little to make it look old. The new will left everything to Dad, with just $20,000 going to Kevin. It felt fair. It felt right. At the reading, everyone was shocked, but happy. Dad cried and kept saying he didn't deserve it. The lawyer seemed confused about some details, but Kevin didn't even show up, so nobody questioned anything. Dad used the money to pay off all his debt and fix up the house. For the first time in years, he seemed relaxed. I felt like a hero. I'd saved my dad from financial ruin and made sure Kevin couldn't blow Grandma's money on drugs or whatever. Case closed. 2 years later, my cousin Jenna showed up at my door, Kevin's daughter. She looked terrible, like she hadn't slept in weeks. She told me Kevin had died in a car accident the month before, and while going through his stuff, she found a copy of Grandma's original will, the real one. She sat at my kitchen table and just stared at me. She said she knew what I'd done, and she could prove it. She had photos of the original will that Kevin had shown her years ago, plus handwriting analysis from a lawyer friend. But she said she wasn't there for money. She was there because I needed to know what my lie had cost. Kevin had been trying to get clean, she said. He'd been in and out of programs for years, but after Grandma died, something changed. He'd called Jenna crying, saying Grandma was the only person who still believed in him. He'd kept a copy of the will because it proved she still loved him, even after everything. When he found out he'd been cut out completely, he spiraled, started using again harder than ever. She pulled out her phone and showed me text messages, Kevin writing that he must have been an even worse person than he thought if his own mother couldn't forgive him. Him saying he understood why nobody wanted him around. The last message was sent 3 days before he died. I guess some people don't deserve second chances. I tried to explain myself. I told her about Dad working so hard, about all the sacrifices, but she just shook her head. She said Kevin had been planning to use the inheritance to pay for long-term rehab. He'd already picked out a facility and everything he wanted to get clean for his daughter, for his grandkids he'd never met. That night, I told Dad everything. I thought maybe he'd understand. Maybe he'd see why I did it, but he didn't say a word. Just walked out of the room and locked his bedroom door. The next morning, I woke up to police at my door. Dad had reported me for fraud. He'd rather face financial ruin than live with money that wasn't rightfully his. The last thing he said to me before I was arrested was that I'd turned him into an accessory to theft, and he'd never forgive me for that.